Hey, basketball fans, welcome into a brand new episode of your favorite WNBA show, Around the Rim. And now we are on YouTube, no longer a podcast, in case you haven't heard. I am your co-host, LaChina, joined by co-host Terrika-Foster, Brasby. And unfortunately, we are starting today's show with some very tragic and devastating news. We lost a member of our women's basketball family. Nikki McCray-Penson has passed away. And if you don't know who Nikki McCray is, she has been a staple in our game for a very long time and was instrumental in its growth on various levels. She played as a Lady Vol under the leadership of Pat Summitt, went on to play in the ABL, the WNBA, was a competitor at the USA basketball level on our national team, winning gold medals there. Went on to coach and had various stops, including many years alongside Dawn Staley at South Carolina, helping her build that program. She was the head coach at ODU, most recently had taken a position at Mississippi State as head coach, and then on to Rutgers as an assistant. And we learned today that Nikki is no longer with us. She was diagnosed with cancer, I believe, in 2013 initially, and fought an incredible fight over the years. Just someone who had just such a beautiful spirit. One of my fondest memories of spending time with Nikki is she had called when she was at ODU and asked me to come and spend time with her players. And so I went up and watched her practice and got to spend time with Nikki and watch her intensity between the lines. And for me, T, she will always be remembered as someone who not only helped us to build the game to where it is now, but she just had an incredible fire for coaching and was passionate about mentoring young women. She had a profound impact on so many players. I was just reading a post from Asia Wilson as a just ode to everything that Nikki meant to her. But she also had a great love of God, and her faith was what really anchored her as a person. If you knew her at all, she was always talking about the love of God and his impact on her life. So I just want to send so much love to everyone who's ever come across the path of Nikki. You understand how special she was to her husband, to her family, her children. I believe she may have had one son, or she might have had two kids. I can't remember at this time, but just a sad day, T.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I remember watching Nikki in the W as a young kid. I remember meeting her for the first time in 2017. I remember how excited I was and retweeting when she followed me on Twitter, because I was like, oh, Nikki McCray follows me. She was just such a person who honestly gave all that she had to the game. And she was someone who honestly enjoyed, from my experience with her, giving that back to those who wanted to know more and learn more about basketball. She was so ecstatic when I met her. And honestly, I'm very saddened to hear this news. I know she was a fighter. She was a strong advocate for breast cancer. And so it is something that I think the basketball community is going to feel for the next few days, because of how much that she meant to this game, how much she meant to this industry, how much she meant to a lot of people. So my sentiments and condolences also go out to her family, to her team, to those who loved her, knew her personally, and just continue to pray and fight for those who have to deal with the same things that Nikki had to deal with. Breast cancer is real. A lot of teams right now are honoring and having events and things surrounding breast cancer awareness. And so, again, my heart goes out to her family, and I just thank her honestly for everything. Thank her for all that she gave. Thank her for all that she did. Thank her for me being a 12-year-old kid, getting an opportunity to watch her play. I still remember my Team USA poster. There was a picture of her. She has like these blonde braids, like this blonde hair or something on this poster. And it's just one of those things where when you think of the early days of the WNBA and you think of how monumental Team USA meant to a lot of us, she's definitely one of the staples of that.
Yeah, she was striking, and her smile would really light up a room. And I, growing up in Washington, D.C., obviously with her playing for the Mystics, she was one of those first names, one of those first faces that you remember with that team. But you're right, when it comes to the fight against breast cancer, we lost another amazing friend of ours in this community, and Tiffany Jackson, not too long ago. I was so heartbroken I wasn't even able to speak on it. Tiffany was someone who I considered a sister, who had played in WNBA for many years and also passed away as a result, ultimately, of breast cancer. And so we have to get more involved, more educated, especially with Black women who tend to suffer from the most dangerous type of breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer. We have to be proactive and making sure we're taking care of our bodies, getting our mammograms now starting at 40 years old, make sure we're getting our breast exams even earlier than that, even self-exams. And I have to just give a nod to the K-Out Cancer Fund. I do serve on the board of that fund, and something that they started doing as of recently is really focusing on underserved women, and that is Black women, underserved communities, and how it's affecting all kinds of cancer are affecting our community in particular because of the lack of resources, because of the lack of healthcare. It's an emergency. And I just, obviously I'm trying to do the work from that angle, but it takes all of us, a community, to continue to champion for breast cancer research. K-Out Fund has given so much money to the research of cancers, especially those that impact women. The Play for K initiative that we all try to participate in during the college women's basketball and WNBA season, so important to fundraising efforts. So whatever you can do in whatever space you are in, let's fight this fight together. But rest in peace, Nikki, and thank you for everything that you meant to so many of us and that you meant to the game. In today's show, we're going to talk about just a couple of topics. Number one, coaching changes in the WNBA. James Wade is on the move, and some very surprising announcements from the Chicago Sky. Also, there's been a coaching change in Phoenix that Terrika and I have yet to be able to discuss. Vanessa Nygaard was relieved of her duties there. Interim head coach Nikki Blue has taken over. So we want to touch on those two topics, and then we'll talk a little bit about All-Star reserves. But let's start with Chicago, because this is major news and has really drawn some attention on several fronts, not just to the Chicago Sky organization, but the position of head coach in the WNBA. Chicago announced that they had a change to their coaching staff. James Wade, who was serving as general manager and head coach, has taken a job as an assistant coach with the Toronto Raptors. They said, quote, "We are thrilled that James can fulfill a lifelong dream to join the NBA, and we send him our warmest congratulations." That was from principal owner Michael Alter. What's interesting about those comments is that when you read the quote from James Wade, and I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of quotes here from our girl Annie Costable with the Sun-Times, but James Wade actually said that he had not previously thought about coaching the NBA. He says he had never strongly considered coaching in the NBA until this opportunity arose. He didn't provide a timeline of when the discussions with the Raptors begin, but said he was approached recently and got the Sky's approval to pursue it. James also said that his decision to leave the Sky was an opportunity to, quote, "further myself as a coach." And so he also said, quote, "It wasn't about money. It was an opportunity to coach on a level where I can further myself as a coach. At the same time, I can still be an advocate for the women's game." T, I'm going to let you have first crack at this because I have a lot to say, but I'm going to let you go ahead and your thoughts in general on what happened, on James Wade, on all of this.
Yeah, my thoughts are very quick and to the point. Number one, I'm never going to be one to think that someone should not take opportunities that are available to them. I mean, anyone who has an opportunity to do something that they, want to further pursue, I feel like you should absolutely take advantage of that. I think we all work hard to get to a place that we can move to the next level, that we can challenge ourselves at the next level. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. My issue is, number one, this is June. It was June, July when this happened. The NBA season starts in October. Didn't understand why that meant you needed to leave in the middle of the season. Number two, serving as general manager and serving as head coach also means that you're responsible for the movement, the contracts, the negotiations of a team. This was a team that was a champion in 2021. This was a team that most people thought was going to be a championship contender for quite a while based on those performances from 2021. This team was gutted, completely gutted in the offseason. And for me, for you, and I say you because you're the general manager, for you to be able to make those kinds of decisions and then leave the team high and dry with no clear direction, to me was a really, was an interesting move. It was a move that I don't think a lot of people understood. And this is a move that I don't think that I will ever come to understand, no matter the opportunity that presented itself. So that's 2 for me. 3 for me, and most importantly, is I look at Kahleah Copper as someone who put her trust in James Wade. She was someone who has said that she was going to need that support and that she considered him to be like family. And that's a hard thing to do in this business because people come and go real quick in this business. People get broken up real quick in this business. So to say that you consider somebody like family is a big deal. And for me, I feel like he let her down. Even if you took this opportunity to move forward in the fall, to do that right now means to me you let her down. And I don't like that. So those are my thoughts essentially in point blank. I felt like if this is what you wanted to do, by all means do it. But there's a way to do things. And the way that it was done to me was something that I don't think I could understand, approve of, or quite naturally feel like it was done in the best interest of the Chicago Sky or those players.
I agree 100% with everything you said, T. I just want to preface my remarks in the same way. Congratulations to James Wade. He did something very special in bringing a championship to Chicago. He has been pouring into the women's game for a long time, so it's a loss. But I respect everyone's decision and what they feel like is best for their career, whatever that may be. I understand what you're saying about the GM role. I think he traded 2 first-round picks for Marina Mabrey. There was some moves with the GM side of things that has seemed to leave Chicago in a very perplexing situation. This is a team that started out quick out the gates, had a 6-game losing streak. And honestly, when James Wade left, this team had started to pick up some momentum. They had won two games, I think have won 3 since then. But I have a problem with the quote that James was leaving to further myself as a coach. I just get a little tired of the narrative that there is this other place other than women's sports where people can further themselves, can grow. Now, consider the fact that he said this was not about money, which financially I understand, which we have to get there, right? Where we're paying not just players, coaches, GM, and in particular Chicago, and I'll get to them in a moment. But right. We do have to get to the place where this is more enticing. And that's why the $1 million contract for Becky Hammon was so important, is we have to get there. But it made it sound like the WNBA was a stepping stone. To me, an assistant coach in the WNBA and a head coach, assistant coach in the NBA and a head coach in the WNBA, like there's no comparison. You are sitting at the top, in my opinion, in many ways. And not to say that he can't go there and learn different, techniques to motivate players and skill workouts and all that stuff, but you can do that in the off season. You can go do a internship, shadow, whatever you want to do during the NBA season and learn all those things. Especially if you have this relationship with I can't remember the GM. Masai. I can't remember how you say his name, but the GM for the Raptors. If you have this relationship with him, do that in the off season. So that's one of the things for me. Is like the WNBA is not a means to a way. Like, and I say that in every aspect of our sport. Like, a lot of people saying they're going to get their start in the WNBA, then go to the NBA, go somewhere else. No, this is the place to be. Like, this is what's hot. So I didn't like the way that was framed. And I did reach out to James just to clear this up. I reached out to James to have a further conversation. He never responded to me. So now I get to say what I want to say. Yep. So I didn't like the timing, to your point. Why the NBA season doesn't start to the fall. And I don't know if that was his decision. It might have been the Sky's decision. I have no idea, but that doesn't look good. But you have to start to ask some questions about the Chicago Sky organization in general, right? There has just been too many interesting departures over the years for this organization, for this franchise, whether it's Sylvia Fowles or Elena Deladon. Now James Wade leaving in the middle of the year. You know, Candace Parker and Courtney Vandersloot and Allie Quigley not re-signing back. Like, we can talk all day about how much James Wade has to do with that, but at the end of the day, that ownership group is in control of a lot of this, of who they hire, of what decisions they make, of the GM head coach role. Like, should those have been split? There's so many things. And, this is an organization that has, at least from my understanding and talking to players that have been there, has not invested, has not wanted to spend money, resources, has been one of the organizations in this league that have not stepped up to the challenge, as everyone is doing more and spending more. Candace Parker even talked about leaving Chicago, and not that this was a reason, but going to Vegas and being able to have a locker room and have facilities. And it's like, and I know D Wade had visited, and there's some conversation about him joining the ownership group. So I understand they're trying to make changes, but this is long-standing issues for the Chicago Sky. Like, something has to change. Yep. And I just wonder, if maybe they didn't want to match an offer that the Raptors gave Coach Wade, or maybe, I don't know, and I know we'll never know.
I was wondering if the fact that he held the GM title played a role in why he may have had to step down, because I don't know, I'm not familiar with the rules, but I wondered if there was something that said you can't serve as an assistant coach and a GM in that way in the NBA. I don't know. So I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, as maybe there's some rule change there. But I mean, even if that wasn't the case, even if it was just a simple, I was ready to go right now, I just don't think that that's a move, given all that you have done and have given and have meant to women's basketball. I felt like there just would have been a bit more consideration for the team, for the league, and for the women who have trusted you. To me, that's the bigger issue. Teams come and go, but these women put their trust in you. And I feel like you let them down by leaving in the way that you did.
Right. And because of Chicago's reputation with all the departures I mentioned, it makes me think that there's more to this story, and it wasn't on James Wade's side. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's some ways that maybe the organization fell short. So onward and upward, I know that there's another coaching change as well. And then let's circle back and talk about candidates after we discuss Phoenix.
Yeah, so Phoenix also decided that it was time for a change in their head coaching department, and they released head coach Vanessa Nygaard. Vanessa had only been there for a year. She signed with the team in early last year, and had not really had the kind of season that I think was expected of her. And to be completely honest with you, it's very difficult in her situation, because she started off her tenure as head coach with Phoenix already kind of behind the eight ball, learning that her star center, Brittany Griner, would not be returning to the team because she was being detained in Russia. You add to that the fact that early on in last season, there was some conflict between Diana Taurasi and Skylar Diggins-Smith. You continue to add to that midway through last season, Tina Charles went through a contract divorce and left the team in the middle of the season. And then towards the end of the season, you end up dealing with some injuries, including the injury to Shea Petty, who had been pretty reliable and consistent for you. And you guys barely make the playoffs. So on the surface, it was already a difficult start to Vanessa's career as a head coach. But I think things continue to be a bit more difficult as this season started. You also starting this season without Skylar Diggins-Smith, who's on maternity leave. You get Brittany Griner back. However, Brittany doesn't know you, to be completely honest with you. You've never coached her. She's never coached with you. So you are trying to kind of find your footing. And then I think from the very beginning, there were questions about whether or not Vanessa was the right coach for this Phoenix Mercury team. It was about style. You've got a lot of personalities that you have to deal with this Phoenix Mercury group. Were you equipped to be able to do that? Was your resume giving you the experience to lead a franchise of this caliber that has the championship pedigree, that has the kind of fan base, that this is the expectation level? So a lot of those questions were circulating beforehand, but when you start your season 2-10, that was the last straw. And, you know, Phoenix's general manager actually spoke to this and said, and I quote, "Our organization and our fans expect a lot from the Phoenix Mercury. Nygaard managed through a lot of adversity the last year and a half, but at the end of the day, professional sports are result oriented, and 2-10 is not the result that we expect. It was time to make a move." So with that said, LaChina, I'll give you the reins here first. Were you surprised by this? And more so, now that head coach or interim head coach Nikki Blue has taken over, do you expect the possibility of a turnaround for the Mercury?
So I was not surprised by this move. In fact, I wasn't expecting it. You know, I like Vanessa. I've had several conversations with her. She was thrown into the fire. I mean, there was so much going on last year in Phoenix. There was more drama than a 6th grade lunch cafeteria break. Okay. Like there was a lot going on. And so I commend her for how she handled herself and steadied this team through all of that. You know, considering the fact that didn't they make the playoffs after all of that last year? Like, I'm pretty sure they made the playoffs.
They did.
Yeah, which is wild. So there's that. But there were coaches this year. This is where I think things took a turn for the worse for her. Is there have been coaches this year that have done more with less. Yes, Diana did suffer an injury, so she missed some time this year. Brittany's working her way back, but is actually playing at a high level. They've got injuries here and there, but there are a lot of coaches that, you know, Atlanta, for example, they don't have one MVP on their roster, and yet Tanisha Wright finds a way to keep them in playoff position. Like, yeah, she wasn't able to stack up to what some of the other younger coaches, if you will, in the league were given. And I do go back to her hiring when I heard some of the names that were being passed around, Stephanie White, Teresa Weatherspoon. And I'm like, you know, like, not to say that she didn't have some specific qualifications, but when you mention those two people, look at the job Steph White's doing now. We know Teaspoon has had success on the NBA side. Hope to see her surface here. It's kind of like, not sure exactly how she got the job, but not hating whatsoever. I just know that, and you and I talked about this in the very beginning, this team, because of the personalities on this team, because of the experience on this team, like, you got to know what you're doing. Like, you're coaching one of the greatest players of all time in Diana Taurasi, who knows the game like the back of her hands. If and when Skylar Diggins was playing, is playing, will play in the future, she knows the game so well too. Like, you got to grab the clipboard and really have a high understanding of what the plan of execution was. And that is what did not happen. That 2-10, there was not enough execution with the pieces they did have available. The team looked out of sorts. It just, things weren't going well. So they had to make a change. And do I expect they'll let Nikki Blue stay in that seat? I don't. I think they're going to let her coach through the end of the season. And I do believe that, and actually, they may let her coach to the end of the season. I don't know. But I do think they are going to make another hire at some point before next year.
Yeah, I don't suspect that Nikki's going to continue to be the head coach of this team. But to your point, that was the thing for me. Like, even before we knew that Brittany wasn't going to be a part of the team this year or any of that, when I saw who was going to be on the team with the addition of Tina Charles last year, I was like, you need a stronger, larger than life personality to be able to handle this kind of thing. And I wasn't sold even then that Vanessa was going to be able to be that voice. So not surprised at all by what ended up happening, but I am still quite surprised that even if Vanessa couldn't have been that voice. There were enough voices on the court as leaders who I feel should have been able to take a more active part in getting people to step up and rally around what they had. That's what surprised me so much this year. Again, injuries, but I'm like,
they get paid to play. They're not getting paid to coach.
You do get paid to play, but you also get paid to win. And for me, I don't understand, like, and I had this same conversation with another team and another star player, where it's like, I get that y'all are not the coaches on the floor, but you get paid to win. And you do have an impact on the voices that are around you. You see something that isn't popping off properly, you have the ability to be like, listen, you need to be in this position. Or we coming in these little timeout huddles, this person keeps blowing by you every time. I need you to move to the wing or something. Like, they're like, you're the ones that's on the court. I say this about players all the time. You're the one that's on the court. Coach is going to say and do what they want to do for sure. But when you're on the court and you're in the moment, sometimes you got to call an audible. And 2-10 is just not like, this team is not 2-10. This is not a 2-10 roster. They're 3-13 now at this point. They're not a 3-13 roster. So, I mean, at some point, no, I'm not asking you to actively become the coach, but y'all can call audibles when necessary. And sometimes those were not happening to me.
Doing that night in and night out, I think that's a lot to ask for a 40-game schedule. Like, calling an audible is something you do as an exception. Doing that night in and night out, I don't agree. I don't think that should be on the role of a player. But needless to say, I do hope that they circle back around to Teaspoon after she has been mysteriously released by the New Orleans Pelicans, which this isn't an NBA show, but boy, I would like to dig into that. I do hope they go that route, like definitely looking at former players first. But who knows? And what is Chicago looking? What are they going to give? Like, what does the package look like? We just talked about their investment. What kind of coach are they going to shell out dough for? Like, are they going to pay for Teaspoon? You got to come out the pocket for Teaspoon. Okay.
You do. And, to your point earlier, and I know we've got to wrap up, but I think Becky Hammon actually, to your point, shown that the WNBA in terms of a head coaching role is a premier role. Period. It's a premier role. She had an opportunity in the NBA, and many thought, whether or not it was to come to fruition, we don't know. Many thought she could have been or might have been the best position to be the first female coach in the NBA. And she understood that it was important to have a head coaching role in the WNBA because it is a head coaching role. So hopefully these teams understand that it is a premier spot and pay what is deserved for these positions and for these roles, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, last but not least, the All-Star reserves have been announced. You would think I would have my list out right now, but you can definitely check them out on WNBA.com. But anyone stand out as someone you were happy to see, surprised to see? I will say for me, I was so happy for Cheyenne Parker and Alicia Gray, 2 first-time All-Stars out of Atlanta. It speaks volumes for what Tanisha Wright has done from a player development standpoint when a player in their 7th season, 9th season, 8th season, 10th season, whatever, gets their first All-Star bid. It means they're being featured. They have the confidence. Coaches are preparing for those players, and I'm just happy to see the hard work pay off for those 2 particular players. Was surprised to see Ezzie Magbegor there. It just goes to show that you never know like how coaches are thinking. And I don't say that because Ezzie is not a great player. She is all-star caliber. I'm surprised because Seattle has had such a rough year. So that just goes to show that what the criteria is for voting is very different for everyone. And I was kind of surprised that the Washington Mystics didn't have a second person, being that they've been in the top 4 all year. They had Della Dawn, but like you couldn't get Cloud or Atkins somebody. And I haven't looked at the numbers. So, I'm making this as a very general discussion off the top of my head. But I felt like they were kind of trying to, let's put someone from Chicago there. Let's put someone from, like, it was just kind of more of that. But I'm happy for everybody, and I think it's a great field.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Cheyenne Parker, for me, was the one I was super excited about seeing because she absolutely deserved it. I voted for Alicia Gray in my original ballot, so I've been advocating for Alicia. Like, she absolutely deserved to be an All-Star. And just the way
she was a starter on my ballot.
Yeah, she was a starter for me. So I was like, I already know Alicia need to be here. I ain't even tripping on that, but I was so excited to see Cheyenne. Also very excited to see Ezzy. Noelle Quinn have been advocating for Ezzy to be an all-star the entire season. And she plays it. Like when you are preparing for Seattle, you are preparing for Jewel and you are preparing for Ezzy. And that's the bottom line. And so it was very happy to see her. I was glad Nafisa was selected as an all-star as well. There was a lot of conversation about whether or not she should have been a starter. And given the same situation where Minnesota had not been playing their best basketball at the time, they're on a 4-game winning streak, and that is because of Nafisa Collier. 4+ point games. You cannot debate what she's doing right now. So absolutely happy to see her. But I like it. I like it. I love it. I'm ready for it. Shout out to Coach Stephanie White for being an all-star coach. You know, I'm gonna put on for my son. So yeah, I love that.
Put on for your son. And when do we have a show planned for next week?
We got something.
Yeah, I'm sure we have. Yes. Stay tuned. We'll definitely, Terrika and I will both be at All-Star, so hopefully y'all will stop by and say hello. Tweet us. I'm at LaChina Robinson. She is at She Knows Sports. And we are both at Around the Rim. No longer pod, just Around the Rim. See, we growing up. Thank you for listening. Shout out to Sarah, who's filling in as our producer this week. And we will see y'all next week. Peace.